Welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, where we will explore the local arts culture and community in the Lehigh Valley. We'll be doing this through conversations with individual artists, administrators, and organizations. We'll discuss all types of mediums with the goal of enriching local arts culture.
Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast. My name is Ben, and today I will be joined by Matthew McClanahan and Lauren McChesney, the two owners of Shankweiler's Drive-In and the Moving Picture Cinema. Matt has always known he wanted to work in the movie industry. He has a filmmaking degree from Temple University and has produced numerous independent short and feature films. After completing an internship in Los Angeles, Matt became enamored with independent arthouse theaters and shifted his focus toward the presentation side of films rather than their production. In 2014, Matt helped to revive and run a drive-in theater in Carbon County, PA, where he found his niche. Matt teamed up with his friend and fellow theater operator, Brendan Joyce, in 2019 to found the Moving Picture Cinema, presenting professional-grade outdoor cinema to unique, non-theatrical spaces in the greater Philadelphia area. The Moving Picture Cinema kicked off operations with a handful of smart, intimate screenings found at local breweries and taprooms. In 2020, Matt decided to take on the Moving Picture Cinema full-time in order to assist communities in desperate need of safe, socially distanced entertainment during the COVID-19 pandemic. The Moving Picture Cinema also became an outdoor exhibitor for regional theaters whose auditoriums were closed to the public. During the spring of 2022, Matt met with the owners of Shankweiler's Drive-In in Orfield, BA. The theater had been for sale for several years, and its future was uncertain. Matt and his business partner Lauren made the decision to purchase the theater and continue its operations. The drive-in reopened in November of 2022 and is now open year-round. The Moving Picture Cinema continues to innovate and evolve new events and partnerships to offer the drive-in experience to communities across eastern PA, allowing Matt to combine his love of vintage cinema with his borderline obsessive DIY spirit. Lauren spent the majority of her adult life as a medical social worker and healthcare marketer. She met Matt in 2018 when she was a customer at his first drive-in theater. After traveling around the country together, visiting drive-in movie theaters and unique cinematic displays, Lauren found herself gravitating more toward the cinema business. In May of 2022, Lauren took a leap out of healthcare and joined the Moving Picture Cinema full-time to oversee the company's marketing and business development activities, helping to expand the mobile cinema into new markets. This played an integral role in facilitating the company's expansion as they acquired Shankweiler's Drive-In Theater. In her new role, Lauren strives to engage with the community, building partnerships and expanding the theater's usage beyond traditional programming. Lauren and Matt both have a vision for the future of theatrical exhibition and are using their complementary skills to make this a reality. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thanks for having us.
So tell me a little bit about Shankweiler's. I know there's a huge, rich history there, and I'm sure the listeners would love to hear about it.
Well, our tagline is, the oldest drive-in in America, and there's a little caveat to that where we are the oldest operating drive-in in America. The first one opened in Camden, New Jersey, but only lasted about 5 years. Shankweiler's opened the following year in 1934 and has been continuous run ever since. We are the fourth set of owners to take over the theater, and we plan to keep it going well into the future. But yeah, Shankweiler's has been around forever. Everyone local has memories going to it. It's even including myself. I went there growing up, so that's kind of where we are, and the brief explanation of it.
So, we're not just America's oldest drive-in, we're the world's oldest drive-in. We actually found out on a Google search that we have a Guinness World Record.
Wow.
So, yeah.
Oh, that's super cool. I saw on the Wikipedia page, and correct me if I'm wrong, but that you guys also were the first theater to implement FM radio transmission.
That's correct.
That is incredible. I mean, for something that is so standard across the industry today, to be the first ones that did that is just so cool.
Now, radio broadcast wasn't a new thing at the time.
Sure.
But FM was. That's the big. So a lot of drive-ins were using AM transmitters, or they were still using speaker poles.
Yeah.
Shankweiler's kind of took drive-ins into that next generation of sound delivery with the stereo FM. And that's the system that we use to this day. There hasn't been an advancement that really works for, distributing sound across that lot quite as well as FM broadcast does.
you are obviously no stranger to the film industry, and especially projection, having been at Mahoning Drive-In and then the Moving Picture Van and now Shankweiler's. So what I see in common with all three of those are unique environments for watching movies. Tell me a little bit about your draw for those unique environments.
It kind of stems back. I did a study away program in Los Angeles towards the end of my time at Temple. And I kind of fell out of love with the movie industry, but fell in love with movie theaters and the exhibition side. And when I came back to Pennsylvania, I wanted to kind of bring that experience of going to all these unique art house theaters and these unique venues, because there was something fun about going to an unusual space and watching a movie. And I wanted to take that experience and bring it here, because kind of like you, there wasn't a lot here in the Valley or at the time in the Philly suburbs where I was living at the time to experience that. So, my time at the Mahoning was really a great opportunity for me to explore not only, unique presentation in an interesting setting, but also the technology behind it. Because developing the digital system for that drive-in is ultimately what led to, me being able to go on the road with the van and bring that theatrical experience to non-theatrical spaces.
Very cool. Yeah, for those listening, I first was put on the map to these guys because I was living in New York City. I moved back and I was spoiled by the projection houses that were showing older movies in a public or group setting. And so when I moved back, I was really missing that. And I found the Moving Picture Van, which was playing Psycho at the Weyerbacher Brewing Company. And so our whole team of hosts and producers went, and we had a really awesome time, loved the experience, and then we went back shortly after that to see Night of the Living Dead. So yeah, that was super fun. I loved going to those showings at Weyerbacher.
Night of the Living Dead was particularly fun with that cemetery backdrop.
Oh, yeah.
We intentionally positioned a screen so that would be behind it.
I love that so much. And Lauren, when I was looking at your history, it seems like there's quite a bit of a marketing and social media background.
My background is predominantly social work. I worked at a hospital for a long time, and I got tired of working in such a stressful environment. So I found a job at a nursing home that I had been working with through the hospital, and they were looking for a marketer. So it was a little bit of social work still, and a little bit of hospital and medical, and then also started introducing me to marketing and sales. So I started gaining experience with that. Shortly after I started there, COVID happened and everything got a little bit different. So that's when I really started working with Matt and kind of on the back end, trying to figure out how to help with a marketing and business development, specialty, I guess. So helping with the moving picture cinema. And then as we started kind of dreaming about owning a drive-in, then I started learning more about the business side of that.
The first time that you guys came across each other was when he sold you a ticket to the drive-in. And I believe you said that was your first time going to a drive-in?
Yes.
And that was to see Suspiria?
Suspiria, the original one, yeah.
That is so cool. So fill me in on how you got from him selling you a ticket for your first time ever going to a drive-in to now being a co-owner of a drive-in. Like, where did that love and passion to want to become an owner of a drive-in take place?
I don't know. It's the most bizarre thing because I always thought, I just sort of expected I would always be a social worker. Like, that's just sort of how the career tends to go.
Sure.
And I never really thought about, I would never, ever in a million years have thought that I would be here. It's just bizarre. I loved going to the drive-in. I always loved going to the older movies. I went to the Emmaus Theater all the time. And I liked to go see new or re-releases of older movies. So Mahoning was on my radar for a little while. I finally made it out to go see Suspiria, and I was like, this is incredible. Like being able to watch in that different environment, sitting outside under the stars, watching the movie. And then I just sort of kept going.
Where did each of your love for movies stem from?
I joke with people, at least as I exist now. I am a drive-in movie nerd, but I'm not a movie nerd. I'm not a film nerd, I should say. I don't have an encyclopedic knowledge of film and filmography. I don't have a library in my brain. There are a lot of people in this industry that could definitely out-trivia me. But I love drive-ins. I just got fixated on that. And a lot of it is because a lot of my core childhood memories involve drive-ins. I grew up going to Shankweilers. I grew up going to Becky's. And a lot of the movies that came out in my childhood, we went and saw at a drive-in. So I remember seeing the, Tobey Maguire Spider-Man movie on Becky's drive-in screen. I remember watching that silly Van Helsing movie from the 2000s in a thunderstorm at a drive-in, which for a movie about a guy hunting vampires worked out kind of perfectly. And so these weird experiences kind of stuck in the back of my brain. And when I started exploring these art house theaters, that kind of came back to the front.
Definitely.
So yeah, movies. I mean, I went to film school. I guess that's important, but I went to film school. I made dozens of movies. I worked on a few features, but all on the independent side. Nothing with like a theatrical distribution. I have one feature that I directed and produced myself. It only sees a theatrical play when I choose to play it at whatever theater I happen to be working in at the time. So that's kind of my background with that.
Very cool. And how about you, Lauren?
I just grew up going to movies. I am just like Matt. People love to try to name drop these obscure movies to me as though I have an appreciation for it. But I regularly tell people my favorite movies are Jurassic Park and Titanic. And those have been my favorite movies for decades. And I don't, I always tell Matt, when we're coming up with programming, I represent the normal person who maybe doesn't have this in-depth understanding of film and, independent films and artistic things. I'm just the one who likes the blockbusters.
Well, that's a really good jumping point to go into programming. One of my favorite things, just in general when it comes to movies, is this idea of a double feature. Something that the drive-in is so synonymous with. So tell me a little bit about your choices when it comes to programming two movies that go back to back.
So there's kind of two approaches we have, and it all depends on what we're doing.
Sure.
If it is a first-run movie, obviously we're up against a lot of studio Hollywood restrictions with what we can play. So it's a little bit of a dance when we're programming first-run material, but we do our very best to try to make sure that whatever co-feature we have with our headliner either ties into it, complements it, or somehow, kind of riffs off it.
Sure.
It's always kind of a balance to strike. And you want to make sure you're programming a co-feature that, your first audience might be cool with staying with, but there might also be a completely separate audience that comes just for that movie.
Yeah, definitely.
And then when you're going on the repertory route with classic movies, that's where you get to have a lot of fun.
Oh yeah.
And that's where, you see us kind of get creative with screenings like Twister and The Shining, which I won't spoil the tie-in for anyone who hasn't seen those movies, but there is one and it's awesome.
That is super cool.
I forgot how much The Shining tied into Twister until finally rewatching it on the drive-in screen. And that was perfect.
Oh, yeah.
So, and being able to do fun, nerdy stuff like that satisfies me, for sure.
For sure.
Sometimes we just pick things that we want to watch. So we had one weekend a few weeks ago that there weren't any new releases that we wanted to show. There wasn't really a huge audience that we were anticipating. So we played Superbad and Step Brothers, which are just movies I really like that I thought were funny. And we enjoyed watching them and people actually came, which was surprising. So sometimes that's how we choose as well.
That's awesome. For each of you, what in a perfect world, regardless of studio restrictions or cost, what would be your perfect double feature?
Titanic is the whole feature, probably.
I've always wanted to put Wizard of Oz and Return to Oz back to back. That is such a weird journey to go on.
Yeah.
I've never even seen that.
It is.
Is it a sequel?
It is a sequel. It is a sequel. It's by Disney.
Oh.
So where Wizard of Oz is Warner Brothers, but it's based on the sequel book. But it delves into a lot of darker sort of psychological elements, particularly with Dorothy in the first act. There's also some very disturbing imagery throughout involving some villainous characters. So it's one of those famous, like, traumatized me as a kid. This movie's meant for kids, but kids probably shouldn't watch it. It's a great second feature for a drive-in.
Oh, yeah. Along with this idea of programming comes the business side of things. The things that I'm sure most of our listeners are very unfamiliar with. Could you key our audience in a little bit on that behind the scenes, what that looks like to go from concept, we have a double feature idea, to getting those digital assets to project? Tell me a little bit about that whole process from beginning to end.
It is so complicated, and people never believe me when I tell them that, but that was the biggest thing that I had to learn because I came at this like, let's play this movie and let's play this movie. And Matt was always like, no, like, we can't do that because of certain restrictions. There's certain studios that are much easier to work with than others and a little more flexible. I don't know. Do you want to explain about like the double feature part of it?
Yeah,
it's so hard.
So with drive-ins, like you said, drive-ins are synonymous with double features. And that's kind of an edge that we have versus our indoor counterparts is we have a lot of flexibility to bundle movies together. That's kind of a uniquely drive-in thing.
Yeah.
And so most of the time, we kind of have a lot of wiggle room in the first run sphere to play with our co-feature.
Sure.
Particularly if we stay in-house with whatever studio is putting out the first feature. If we stay within that studio, generally we can kind of get what we want. But there's other studios that have mandated co-features. They won't let us program. So a lot of like first run movies we choose to bring in hinges on what we can pick as the co-feature. So if there's a movie coming in that might have a strong start, but they want us to put a real turkey in for the co-feature,
Sure.
we might have to skip it because we have to think about, like, our audience wants that value. They want to get two movies for that price, and they want to make sure that whatever is playing next is something that they might want to stay for, even if they don't. So we have to kind of be cognizant of, like, is that co-feature going to draw? So there's a lot of weird nuances and politics and little caveats with every studio. And we actually work with a film booker that helps us navigate. Most theaters will have a film booker that represents numerous theaters so that they can get good deals. Because that's the other kind of odd thing with Hollywood is that you kind of have to, like, haggle the studios and negotiate terms with them. So working with a booker that represents multiple theaters helps with that bargaining power.
Yeah.
So our booker represents a lot of drive-ins. So it's helpful for us to kind of...
That makes sense.
Another thing that's become kind of a new consideration is streaming windows. And that's something that theater owners, associations, like all of them, have been talking about regularly, releasing into theater and releasing onto streaming platform at the same time. And so there's been a lot of studying about whether that hurts their bottom line, you know, and how much money they end up making, which it significantly does. But it also affects whether we choose to show those movies, because if we're showing a movie that we're locked in the show for 3 weeks and they are going to be releasing it on the streaming after 2 weeks, that's going to hurt us. That's going to affect the audience that's coming to us.
Totally.
So we're constantly paying attention to things like that as well.
theaters and drive-ins come in all shapes and sizes, many, many different screen counts. One of the things about Shankweiler's is that it's a single screen. Tell me a little bit about the pros and the cons to being a single screen drive-in.
I think the biggest pro to a single screen drive-in is that there's less noise. You know, with multi-screen drive-ins, you're always catching glimpses of that other screen. There's always sound spillover from other parts of the field that are playing different movies.
Yeah.
If one side's playing a drama and the other side's playing an action movie, you're going to hear explosions during a pivotal scene, which is a little bit, and you know, so that's always kind of something that I've looked on single screen drive-ins favorably, because everyone's watching the same thing. Everyone's there together to experience one movie together, and I like the idea of not having anything interfere with that. I'm a stickler about like the presentation side of it and making sure that everything, anybody who has their headlights on can tell you. I like to make sure that you know, everyone is able to be engrossed in the movie if they want to be. And so having multiple screens, I think, makes that a little bit muddy. The downside is obviously on the programming side, it's very challenging. There have been so many instances, even in our short time this spring, that we wished we had two screens just so we could play all the movies that are coming out.
Sure.
You know, especially this summer, now that we're finally kind of, well, the writer's strike might change that next year, but this summer, this summer we have a lot of movies to play with, so it might not be so bad being a single screener next year. But this summer, you know, there's so much stuff coming out. A lot of stuff overlaps. If we get a movie that has a 2-3 week commitment, we might not be able to bring another big blockbuster in. So it's a little more of a juggle when you only have one screen to program. But if you have two, I think the ideal number is two, because it's not, you're not inundating customers with you know, a variety, but at the same time, you're able to kind of like get the movies you want to get. But with one screen, it's nice because there's that just that central focus.
I saw on social media for Shankweiler's that you're doing some kind of a van get together.
Vanadoo.
That's it.
We've been joking about that for years.
Vanadoo, I think, started as a joke. In fact, it was something that I just kind of made mention of when we were doing our shows. And it's a product. It's something that kind of purely we fell into by accident. When we started doing the moving picture stuff, I just happened to have that old van. I bought that van back when I was running Mahoning to help me with restocking, because I would always buy tons and tons of food and haul it up to the theater. So I got that purely for a utility need of transportation and moving goods. And then when I went into moving picture full time, it came with me to haul all the AV equipment. So I just, you know, I rebranded it and just started doing that. But it turns out that is a highly sought after classic van that a lot of people love. And purely by accident, I kind of found myself in the midst of this weird underground van community of people who drive and restore and hang out with their old weird vans. And so Vanadoo kind of was just born out of that, out of this, like, you know, accidental integration into this subculture. And then, you know, when we expanded and got two vans, of course, I got a matching van. And so now we have like these two old Chevy vans that are kind of our flagship carriers for moving picture.
Very cool. Tell me a little bit more about moving picture. Where did that concept come from? What really made you want to jump into that in the first place?
The work we were doing at the Mahoning was really cool, but for a lot of people, it was inaccessible.
Sure.
You know, the Mahoning is up in the mountains. It's way out of the reach of a lot of major cities, and way out of the reach for a lot of people that can't necessarily travel to it. And the idea with the moving picture was to be able to take that sort of retro drive-in experience and plop it in the middle of a urban or suburban area. You know, go to a non-theatrical space and turn it into a theater overnight. And so we ended up really hitting it off with a couple museums to start doing special curations. Some of my favorite programming we do is for the Modern Museum in Philly. We do a lot of weird stuff for them, and that's a lot of fun. And the ability to kind of turn those spaces, be it a museum or a park or a brewery or winery, and make that a theatrical space in a couple hours and have everybody experience a movie in a unique venue it was enticing to me. And after building that digital rig at Mahoning and making that work on a massive drive-in screen, being able to take that same system and then implement it in people's backyards, literally.
Yeah.
It was just kind of just a fun concept for me. And it makes that experience accessible for everybody and brings that experience to communities that don't have drive-ins anymore.
Because there used to be a ton.
There used to be a ton of drive-ins.
One of the things Matt and I like to do is go find the places with abandoned drive-ins. So, because there are so many. So we found all the ones around like the Lehigh Valley and around Philly. And so there are a lot of people who grew up going to drive-ins and they just don't exist anymore. They're like a CVS or a grocery store or a warehouse. So bringing the drive-in back to those areas has been fun.
That's awesome. Now, you said that you had left the social work field. And when you first started, was it with Moving Picture?
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about that.
Well, I very abruptly quit my job. So there wasn't a ton of thought that went into it. There was a unfortunate job situation that I immediately was just like, I can't do this anymore. And then we talked about, should I get another like quote unquote real job with benefits and everything. And I begged Matt to just let me join his company. So I came up with a position for myself and then told him that I was working with him. So and then we made that work. So initially I started just continuing with the marketing aspect of it.
Sure.
Going to network, get the word out about the company and get some more, jobs and new connections. And I think that worked out really well. And it also created a really good foundation in the community where people got to know us and know what we were doing before we bought Shankweiler's.
Yeah.
So then once we got Shankweiler's, it looked like a natural growth and a natural progression of something we had already been working on.
Well, it was.
Well, I mean, it was, but to everyone, like, it's not like we just like burst onto the scene of like, and now we bought Shankweiler's.
We didn't just appear with the drive-in.
Yeah,
it's we had built, like, we had spent time building up this idea of what we were doing, getting people invested in it on a small scale so that when we graduated onto having our own drive-in, people were already really excited and really invested in it.
Yeah, establishing the moving picture cinema as a brand was kind of an important step in our networking endeavors with Shankweiler's, and that's all Lauren. She hustles all the events and is always the public face of the company. I work in the shadows.
Essentially, I get the business, and then Matt makes it actually happen.
You're talking about making these connections with the community. What draws you to want to be drive-in owners in the Lehigh Valley specifically?
Well, I don't think we always were looking to be drive-in owners in the Lehigh Valley.
No.
Originally, so Lauren and I developed an entire plan to open a drive-in theater in Bucks County.
Okay.
We had our sights set on the Philadelphia suburbs because we had Shankweiler's and Becky's here. We had Mahoning to the north. We have 2 more drive-ins above that, 3 more actually. And so there's drive-ins all around us, but no drive-ins down there.
Yeah.
And we were seeing such success with our programming down there that we knew there was a need for it. Like there was a market there for it. Mm-hmm. But one of the things that killed the drive-in in the 80s and 90s was land value. Land was basically becoming more valuable in the businesses that existed on it, and so a lot of drive-ins sold off to developers. And so we were up against that in this real estate explosion where prices are insane. And then when you go on the commercial side, it's unworkable, especially if you're, a 3-year-old company with not a huge cash flow.
Yeah, definitely.
So, really Shankweiler's happened out of pure curiosity. It was for sale for years. It was for sale since like 2014. And I was aware of it, but we had always kind of dismissed it because of the price tag. But on a whim, one night in February, I went over and met the owners, met the realtor, toured the theater. It was like the first time I was at Shankweiler's since growing up.
Sure.
And at the end of that meeting, I just said, let's make it work. Let's make it happen. So, Lauren and I spent the next 9 months securing a loan and going over the business, revising our plan. And it actually ultimately worked out for us because Shankweiler's is an established entity. It is a theater that has endured.
Yeah.
It was born out of the Depression. It has survived all kinds of things. And both global and local events. So it is a resilient business, and being able to show that and prove that and have our own model that complements that was really our key to success in financing that project and making that happen.
Very cool. Yeah, I can't, for someone that is a self-proclaimed drive-in aficionado, I think owning the oldest operating drive-in in the United States is a pretty good feat.
That's definitely a flex, and I am aware of that.
Well, drive-ins during the pandemic really exploded, and they were being used for so many more things than just movies. And I saw on both Shankweiler's website and the Moving Picture website that you guys have ideas and desires and dreams for alternative uses for these spaces.
Yes.
I'd love to hear a little bit about anything you're willing to share publicly about that right now.
So historically, drive-in owners had other jobs. That was like, sometimes they were teachers, and so they had off during the summer, or did something else during the day and then ran the drive-in at night. And we saw this as something that we wanted to make full-time for ourselves. So in order to do that, we had to adapt a business model so that it would be able to succeed and so that it would bring in other sources of revenue besides just showing the movies. So the easiest thing, not really the easiest, but a very clear opportunity came out of the fact that we have 3.5 acres. I don't even know, 3 to 4.
It's 4 to 5. Yeah.
Okay, so we have some acres of land.
We have land.
And it's just empty during the day. It just sits there and waits for the audience to come later at night. So what could we be doing during the day, and how could we be making use of that? So we've talked to some people about doing car shows. We're doing a car cruise-in this weekend, actually, on Saturday. It's a classic car club that's just going to come drive in and hang out, and it should be pretty fun. We've talked about doing like cars and coffee. We've talked to some people who want to host a food truck festival. A lot of drive-ins do things like flea markets, and that's not really a direction we're leaning toward at the moment, but things like craft fairs, we've definitely been open to.
Definitely.
So I tell people all the time that if they have an idea of something that we could do, they should just tell us, and we'll see if we can make it work, because it's still kind of a new idea and a new territory, and we're open to so many different ideas that people might have that we couldn't even think of.
When you guys were running the Moving Picture Cinema during the pandemic, what kind of an impact did you guys see firsthand from when that was going on and operating that business?
The company grew 8,000% in the pandemic. Moving Picture was kind of backburnered for a while. It was something that was started, but then I got busy running the Mahoning. My other co-founder at the time got busy because he operates theaters down south of us. He got really busy. We just, kind of fell out of it. It was just sort of something that, we just didn't have the time for. But the company existed. We did a few gigs, and then the season started up, and I worked at the drive-in. Then pandemic hit, and suddenly there was this explosion of need for outdoor programming. So I very quickly grew it. We upgraded our screen, we upgraded projection, we immediately started marketing ourselves out to shuttered theaters and museums, and that's really where a lot of our lasting partnerships came from, was those initial jobs that we worked during lockdowns. And being able to provide entertainment for a population that's starved of things to do was really kind of inspiring. And it was like an honor, because we were working with well-established, beloved theaters that couldn't open, and now we're making it happen. We're making a presentation happen safely outside for an institution that this community loves, and being able to facilitate that and be a part of it was just very exciting. And so and that ultimately is what led to years and years of long-term partnerships with these theaters. So
yeah.
From a purely selfish point of view, I was working in a nursing home all through COVID, and it was really rough. So having opportunities to go and watch movies outside and be doing something was, I don't know, it was just so needed. It was so necessary. And I kind of feel like that's what helped me survive through it. And I know that there are a lot of other people who looked to these sort of outdoor events as, a way to make it through a really hard time.
I want to hear a little bit more about marketing and what you guys do marketing-wise, and some of the pros, cons, and challenges that you face when it comes to marketing a drive-in.
I think historically, drive-ins don't do a ton of marketing. A lot of them, they just sort of rely on the fact that they are a drive-in in a town, and everyone has grown up with it and everyone knows about it. So word of mouth carries it on, which I think Shankweiler's largely has done. It just kind of was a drive-in that was there. We know it's something special. We know it has the historic value. People in this area, for some reason, don't know that. They don't know that it has a Guinness World Record. They don't know how old it is. So we saw a lot of opportunity to really bring that to people's attention and look at different venues and ways of advertising that maybe a traditional drive-in wouldn't pursue. So I went out into the community. I've done presentations we presented at an entrepreneur group. I've done a few speaking engagements, which is not my forte, but that's fine. Just meeting connections and spreading it in that way. But also, we have a really strong social media presence. And Matt has a lot of experience doing that from Mahoning. That's how he managed to grow that business. And we thankfully inherited a pretty solid following when we bought the theater. So we've used that to reach a lot of different audiences that weren't aware of the theater before. Right after we bought it, we went viral on TikTok, which was a frightening experience. Honestly, we had 38 followers when we got the account.
Yeah.
And now we're at 16,000, I think. And it happened overnight, where we posted, I posted a dumb video of Matt turning on the neon sign, and it got 2.5 million views. And we were oh my God. So all winter we were getting people from Philly and New York and out of state, just people driving out, which was really exciting. And that's something that wouldn't have happened if we weren't marketing in that way and marketing on social media.
You mentioned something really interesting there, which is wintertime. Something that not many drive-ins do is stay open year-round. Mm-hmm. Tell me a little bit about the decision to stay open year-round and some of the benefits and drawbacks that has.
It's actually kind of with Shankweiler's is the exception. Shankweiler's has always been seasonal. But drive-ins as a whole, historically, were year-round, including those up here in the Northeast. It's actually kind of a recent phenomenon that they are seasonal. And a lot of that has to do with owner-operators getting older, drive-ins being viewed as kind of a part-time job and not a full-time job, because they used to be a full-time thing that you had, a staff that worked there to make a living. And so we're kind of going back to that model where this drive-in is our full-time job. We're going to be open all year because this is what we do.
Yeah.
But yeah, it is interesting. It's kind of this expected thing that drive-ins are seasonal, but in reality, it's actually kind of a new phenomenon. And when you get out to like kind of the Midwest and further west, even up north where it gets colder than it does here, there's a lot of drive-ins that are still open year round.
Wow.
So it's actually pretty interesting to see how common it still is. And so I think it's been a little bit of a learning curve for us, but also kind of a retraining of our audience.
Sure.
To sort of reintroduce them to the winter drive-in experience.
That's fascinating. What other kind of common misconceptions are there when it comes to drive-ins?
I don't know.
We have a lot of people ask us why we can't start the movie earlier. And we have to explain that, unfortunately, we must go by the sun because it shows in the dark. So that is a surprisingly large misconception.
We have a lot of people also that struggle with the sound delivery, the FM radio. A lot of first timers, they have the picture in their mind of the speakers on the poles, which very few drive-ins do that anymore. And most of the ones that still have them only have like 1 or 2 rows for decoration.
Okay.
They're barely functional.
Speaker poles are for parking.
Yeah, our speaker poles
There are no speakers attached.
are for organizing cars, but so we have a lot of customers that come in with this expectation, like I'm going to hang this pole on my this little speaker on my window. That's how I'm going to hear the movie. Then they get here and they go, oh, I need a radio. If they drive a newer car, it might not even have an FM receiver in it. So there's a little bit of a learning curve for people. A lot of people don't know how to put their car in accessory mode or run their car without their headlights turning on. Yeah. So there's a lot of kind of retraining people for the drive-in experience.
Yeah.
But for the most part, they get there, they learn, and then they have a great time. And next time they come back, they know exactly what they're doing, and it's worked out. So we ended up bringing a small stash of radios in as rentals, just as that kind of emergency stopgap. If someone absolutely cannot hear the movie with whatever equipment they brought, we do have the means of making sure they have a fun night.
We have a lot of people who listen to radios, like listen to radio programs on their phone. And so then they're surprised when we tell them you can't use that for this because and you can explain this a little bit better, that we have a short range radio that kind of overlays over an existing radio station. So if you're picking something up over your phone, you're going to completely miss that. And you're just going to get the Christian music station.
Got it.
Yeah. We are a micro vicinity transmitter, which means pretty much the boundaries of our lot is as far as our signal goes. So, you're not going to find us on a cell phone app. You're not going to find us in a registry because, the station really doesn't exist. It's only for that small vicinity. Yeah. Which is a uniquely, that's a whole thing regulated by the FCC. That's like a drive-in, like little legal thing that drive-ins are able to do. It's very bizarre, but we're limited on how powerful our transmitter can be. So that means that those apps that you get on your phone aren't going to recognize that we are a radio station. Sure. And surprisingly, while we are seeing a lot of advancements in projection with laser technology, we aren't seeing a lot of forward momentum with sound delivery. We have customers ask us about, Bluetooth capability or various transmitting over a Wi-Fi band. And there isn't really a way to do that yet that doesn't involve some kind of signal delay that puts your audio out of sync with the picture. There's something about the old school FM broadcast that is an immediate delivery to your device that allows us to play the soundtrack with the movie, where the digital counterparts haven't quite gotten that dialed in yet.
I had a funny experience right in line with what you were saying before about people needing to learn their vehicles and to get the best experience. Yeah. I have a 2019 Hyundai, and it took me the first time we went to the drive-in probably a good hour and a half to figure out how to turn my interior like accessory lights from full brightness down to like 1%. And it was so distracting until I could do it. But now that I figured out how to do it, I can do it every time. And it's the kind of thing, until you're in that exact circumstance, you have no idea how to make it work.
I've gotten pretty good at like just reaching into people's windows and turning their lights off. Like it's like a puzzle box for me. It's like, how does this work? There's all kinds of weird combinations. Did you put your parking brake on? Did you press the start button really quick once, or did you hold it in? There's all these weird little, and every automaker is different. So you just kind of trial and error until eventually the lights turn off.
Yeah.
If it doesn't work, worst case scenario is I throw plastic bags over the lights to douse them. But
and this was so much a problem during the winter because people were sitting in their cars and running their heat.
Yeah,
so
that makes sense.
That's kind of where Matt became this expert, because everyone was always in their car. As we get into the summer, people really will be sitting outside, and hopefully it won't be so much of an issue. But
it's funny. It's like in the winter, it's more headlight control, but you're not jumping into cars because people are running their cars intermittently to keep them warm. But when you get into the summer season, now people are running their car batteries down, so you're not having as many headlights, but you're jumping more cars. It's a weird. The seasons.
Yeah, there's a lot of things that you wouldn't think about unless you're in that exact situation. Well, as we bring this episode to a close, what is one thing that you guys are really excited about for this upcoming summer season?
Barbie.
Barbie?
Hopefully selling out.
Yeah. That's something
hitting capacity, because this drive-in does that a lot. It's not a huge drive-in, so it's known for selling out, and so I'm very excited to be there that night that it hits capacity. That's going to be awesome.
You guys, thank you so much for coming in today. It was such a joy talking with you both.
Thank you for having us.
And that was our conversation with Matt and Lauren from Shankweiler's Drive-In and the Moving Picture Cinema. For more information, you can visit their websites at shankweilers.com and themovingpicturecinema.com, or check them out on Instagram at Shankweilers or The Moving Picture Cinema, respectively. Shankweiler's Drive-In Theater is located at 4540 Shankweiler Road, Orfield, PA, and starting this Thursday, May 25th, they will be showing movies 7 days a week through the fall. As always, movies start at sunset. This summer, they will also continue the mobile cinema with upcoming shows, including North Whitehall Township's Movies in the Park series, as well as their ongoing Movies at the Mercer series with the Mercer Museum and County Theater in Doylestown. Thanks for tuning in. We'll catch you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast, a Steel Pixel original series. Don't forget to like the podcast, leave us a review, and follow us on both social media and streaming services at Lehigh Valley Arts Podcast.